art has been, as she will share, I think from her first days on this earth has been part of her. In my coming back to SCWCA in the early 2000s, shortly thereafter, I met Cindy, and it's just been a treasure.
I am an interdisciplinary artist. I'm going to talk about fiber art, poetry, and performance. You can find me on Instagram. Fiberverse is where you'll find my website also. As Sandra said, I've been an artist my entire life. I remember at 4 years old sitting in the backyard drawing my bush because it was mine. And in elementary school, I had weekly classes of art. It was just part of school. My children didn't have that advantage, but I did. And at home, even at that age, I was copying old masters in pencil, and they looked pretty good. I saw them later. And then in 6th grade, I was part of a mural project that we did in 4 parts in the 4 seasons. I did fall, and my elementary school got torn down for a Sprint building, but my sister, who still lives, I'm from Kansas City, who still lives in the area, told me they saved the mural and moved it somewhere else, which I thought was cool. So I'm going to take you on an Asian journey for a while because this is where my inspiration really began and kept going, as you will see. And so I also in elementary school had classes at the Nelson Atkins Museum of Art in Kansas City. And unfortunately, there's been a victory and a tragedy in my city just yesterday, but this is where I grew up. And I went back there last year, and I didn't know the Year of the Dragon was coming, but I took this picture. And so I found out many years later that the Nelson has one of the largest Asian collections in the country, but I just grew up with it. It was just part of, what I was exposed to. And they have a temple, the inside of a temple, and a very large size Kuan Yin. I didn't even know who she was, but she was very strong and powerful even to a young child. So in high school, in English class, we were given a choice of writing an essay or doing a bulletin board. So guess which I chose? And so I did these watercolors, self-taught watercolors, ink, copying Japanese art and words. And later my parents framed them, and I just got them back from my family so I can share them with you. No one has seen these because I haven't even had them for a very long time. I was in high school when this happened. So the Asian influence has just been with me very young. And then in college, I was still copying Asian pieces. It was really fun when I would actually see them in museums, the originals. This was all on my own. When I was in college, they weren't teaching watercolor in school. It was considered preliminary actually for many years in universities. And my painting teacher walked into my university class in the 70s and said, "You need to do an oil painting," and didn't return. And I'd never done oils. I'd done acrylics, but I'd never done oils. So that was my painting experience. So I was really on my own for a while. And then going forward, let's see, back again, when I was young, I saw a special on TV about the National Palace Museum in Taipei, Taiwan, and I wanted to go. Little did I know that my husband was going to get a PhD at UCSB in math with lots of young people from Taiwan, and his first teaching job was there. So we went, and I taught English privately, and one of my students' spouse worked at this museum. And so we got a private tour, and it was just wonderful. This was back the first year that we opened relationships with mainland China. It was when we were in Taiwan. And it was just a really special art time. And this is some of the work they have there. And for some reason, and I don't remember why, I stopped painting for 10 years. and that included my time in Taiwan. But I went to the museums and the art galleries. I still loved art. So this then led, as I got into quilting, I was still doing the Asian influence. And so these pieces from 2006, the Solitude series, the challenge to myself was to have drawings in them, text, this time I wrote it, and vintage kimono silks. So you see the silks, the green leaves are actually from a vintage dress, and there's some hand dyes and oil paint sticks and beads. And so sounds surround me of activity and noise. I need time away to listen to God and the breath of creation. So I kept going in this series. This piece, The Quest, 21 by 16 from 2006, is mostly vintage kimono silks. And you can see the drawing in the top right. I seek answers that can only come from a place of stillness in my solitary quest. So this bottom detail are scraps, but it's one of my favorite parts of the piece, and I've got beads on there. And it's probably a good description of my life. There's all these pieces going and moving. And so that's why I think I seek solitude sometimes for the balance. And this is a third piece in the series, Unpeel, in 2007. I unpeel the layers to reveal the real person beneath the mask. And in the lower left, the shiny piece that's gold and purple is from a Japanese pen pal. And in 2003, I lost my house in the old fire. I lost all my fabric, all my threads. I lost, well, everything, just about, all my paintings. But my husband saved my 1-year-old sewing machine, and I'm still using it. And I had this pen pal for 20 years. And so this piece was in the early days, and I like doing shears. So this is an overlay with scraps from another friend, all those bright colored silks. And then the photographs on there. At this time, 2007, the printer inks at home were not good enough. They just washed out. And so I paid to have these done at a print shop, at a quilt shop. And at the time, before I got into quilting, I was gluing the photographs, gluing fabric, gluing paintings to wood, not knowing at that time I was going to transition into quilting. The gold at the top is a stamp or stamps that I made. So then as the Asian journey continues, I did the Natsumi series in 2014. And the top piece is autumn berries, and I've drawn with silver acrylic ink. And there's kimono silks and Nigerian lace. That's from one of the guests that's here today. And then on the bottom is Natsumi Summer Sea. You see, I like to collage. I like to mix textures and beads and embroidery, whatever needs to happen. In the top piece, the figure there is marbled by a friend. And I never figured out if she was an angel, a fairy. I don't know who she is. She just appeared with wings. And so by now, I'm writing poetry, and I'll talk a little bit more about that later. But these pieces, they were on my design wall, so there were more. It's a whole series. And they said, tell my story. And I said, what? So up to this point, the poetry and the art had been very separate in my mind. I'm an artist, I'm a poet, two different hands, two different things. And so when this happened, which was a first, the two started to come together. So I figured I'm going to write a story about Japan, right? There's a geisha. So I take a walk and I hear two things, Manzanar and stillborn. And I went, okay, so I've learned to listen to things that would not normally come out of my own head. So I thought, okay, this story is going to be based in Manzanar. So Moon and Many Petals is a story We have a family I made up, but I did a ton of research into where they would have been displaced from, what happened to them. I have newspaper articles in here from the time, against anyone that was Japanese. And when I wrote this book, it was at the same time it was published when Trump was putting kids in cages. So it was really the displacement hasn't stopped. And so that's really the theme of this book. But, and it's narrated by an unborn child, but I did bring in Japan because the unborn child visits past life grandmother. So this is a page from inside. I'm going to introduce the father and the mother here. The artwork you're looking at is called In the Garden of My Heart. It's 18 by 11 from 2016. So my fiber art is 3 layers. Normally there's top, cotton batting, and a backing. So you're looking at the quilting that's done here. Ancient arts. That day, my father Takumi painted deer and plum design with ink on kimono silk. His hands steady, he was determined to practice the use-in dyeing method in America, while my mother, Mio, embroidered in gold. Abundantly beautiful butterfly. My mother's favorite doll, Fumicho, wore a gold metallic and orange obi with a peach blossom kimono and had a bald head. Mother pretended the doll was a famous dancing geisha like her grandmother, Natsumi, and would place the Takomi wig with 2 flowers upon her. I would have created stories with my dolls. I actually have a doll like this that I don't know who gave it to me because a lot of things they were given to me after the fire, I don't know who they were from, but it has different hairstyles, so I incorporated it in the poem. So this, inside the book, when there's past life visitations between the unborn child and the grandmother, I have these images. So this is from the screens in Manzanar, has all the names of those that were displaced. And recently I sold this book to someone whose uncle's name is in here. And then on top of that, I have Natsumi Summer Beautiful, which is 24 by 15 from 2014. And again, fabric from my Japanese pen pal at the bottom, Nigerian lace, old silks. So I'm going to share with you this poem. Reflection of tree trunk slices through lilies, one younger and taller. Great-grandmother flowed into the room with a tender rustle of her feet, wearing large and small peony blossoms kimono and heavy bamboo pattern obi. Her robe crinkled as she resided on the tatami mat across from my winged soul. Do you have a message from my granddaughter? She asked for ancestor protection in her forced home. Send peace and hope for her heart to beat as I kick in the middle of the night inside her. In the relocation camps, no one has secrets anymore. I ask that you comfort her when I stop breathing. I turned into a paper kite butterfly and walked on the palm to the outside of great-grandmother's hand for a long time. You must go now, she said. In the future, granddaughter will not speak of the camps or of you. So again, I'm combining my imagination, researching what would be worn in this season. But then my friend had this experience in Japan where this butterfly just walked on her hand for a long, long time. So I just incorporate, like my quilts, I collage together a lot of different things. The relocation camp says no secrets anymore came from a newspaper article. So a lot of things put together here. Well, then Luna Many Petals turned into a performance and a collaboration with Takeshi Kanamura. And he does these performances where he wraps people in plastic. This happens to be my nephew, who is a good sport. And this is the Orange County Center of Contemporary Art in 2019. And I collaged fabrics and shapes onto a vintage kimono. And so you can see more of the kimono here. And I love performing. My friend captured this picture, and that just shows how much I enjoy it. And then here the kimono's on the floor, and Takeshi taught me how to fold it in a traditional style in Japan. So I incorporated that into the performance. And then my Asian art has come into my zines, and that's kind of the newest thing I'm doing. And so I took a monoprint workshop up at Engel-Marder last fall for a week with Denise Kramer. And so I printed on rice paper, back to rice paper, or still going forward with rice paper. This is a chine coulée, which was one of my favorite things to do. So you run it through the press, you collage and run it through the press again. And so I'm now painting with ink, soy ink in this case, but I'm still doing rice papers. And this is in the middle of this zine. And here they are at the Artlands in Redlands. And so the second row from the top are all my zines I worked on last year. It was a goal that I set. And I like connecting with the younger generation with the zines, and you can see they're enjoying them in an art opening. So it's a homemade or online publication, usually has a certain subject. I was exposed to zines back in the 60s and 70s because they're also a political voice, and they still are. And so, so I have more poems and fantasy and storytelling, but there's ecological themes in my zines too. So now I'm going to talk about how I moved from painting to textile art. So this painting is the only one that was home that didn't burn, because my friend had it at her house because she was considering buying it. And it also hung in the president's office of Cal State San Bernardino for a few years. But so I was painting. I went from watercolor to acrylics. I did watercolor for many years and taught workshops and classes in Redlands, Huntington Beach, all different places. Starting in the 80s, I was teaching. And then I moved to acrylics on canvas. And during that time, I found Elizabeth Murray at the Temporary Contemporary, which is now the Geffen. But the Temp was just a wonderful place because they experimented. MoCA wasn't open yet, and I had never seen these shaped canvases, dimensional, and a woman artist, and I was so excited. And I found out she was going to be at CSU Summer Arts in '92. I applied and got in, and I got to work with all of these wonderful people. So her husband, Bob Holman, came. I didn't work with him one-on-one, but he is a spoken word artist. And so he gave performances in the courtyards. And I worked with Elizabeth Murray, Roland Reese, and Peter Frank. And Elizabeth, who's now passed, came and spoke to me, and she was amazing. And when she left, I went outside and I sat down and cried because I was just so touched to be with her one-on-one. Not because she said anything that upset me, but the three of them all talked about the strength of my collage work. And I was collaging even then in my acrylics. I collaged in my watercolors. And so moving into collage and quilting wasn't such a surprise. And summer arts was a great experience. I got to dance with the urban bush women. I got to hear, music, and there was film. My friends and I even put together a dance, music, and painting exhibition. In the 2 weeks we were there, we put on a show and I love putting different media together. I went home and told my husband that I wanted a wall of plastic so I could pour paint like I did at Summer Arts. And I had carpeting, but we did it. And so the Tundra series came out of that. I even went to Estes Park, Colorado, to study the tundra with scientists. And I'm taking pictures, and they're probably thinking, what is she doing? But I wanted, research for my art. And so I was exhibiting paintings with my friends, and two of my painting friends said, do you want to go to a quilt guild? And I'm like, sure. I don't quilt, but let's do this. And so I attended for 3 years, did not make a quilt. I was painting. But I learned the history of the quilt blocks, the stories. I learned I can, tell the ages of fabrics pretty well now. And just at that time, the women were doing a lot of hand quilting. They were like museum pieces that they just made all the time. And I told them that. And so now the hand quilting is dying out. But at that time, the machine quilting was the unusual thing, which is what I got into. So I wasn't quilting, and I went to the quilt shop. As I showed you before, I was transferring photographs, and the owner said, that would make a beautiful quilt. And she doesn't know that I'm not quilting because she's at the store while the meetings are happening. And it stuck with me. And I thought, you never know when something is going to hit you. And I thought, that would be a beautiful thing. And I did learn how to sew in school, in high school, but not how to quilt. So I knew how to use a sewing machine already. But at the time, there weren't books about making art quilts. There weren't really organizations. And honestly, I know there's a great history of women's arts for textiles, but when I started showing them, the galleries didn't know what to do with me. And I joined SCWCA and met Sandra because they were willing to hang my quilts next to paintings and photographs so that people could see it was fine art. And that was really why I joined, Sandra, because it was just a time of a lot of educating. I went to my galleries and said, I'm still an artist, but I'm working in a new media. So the way I learned how to make the quilts, and I did art quilts from the beginning, I could not match a point. But I went to a quilting circle once a week and I said, here's what I want to have happen. How do I get there? And they were all traditional quilters, but they were really patient with me and they showed me the techniques. So I know the techniques. I know how to do traditional pieces, but I started with art quilts from the very beginning because I was an artist and that's how I saw, and I did collage. I love collage. And so now I paint with thread. I also found out that you can draw with the sewing machine. So you drop the feed dogs and you just go. So you can't cough or sneeze because if you move it, it's gone. And it took me 5 years to make the stitches even. So you can't hardly tell that it's free motion. But my logic was, I know how to draw. I just need to learn how to draw with the sewing machine. And I did. And eventually my friends started an art organization at Seal Beach called Quilts on the Wall, which still exists. So I went there once a month to be with other fiber artists, and we did exhibitions. And then an international group called SCWCA came around, and now fiber art is everywhere, and it's in the grad schools, and it's been quite a change. The young people think that they're doing something brand new, and I just smile because I've been doing this over 30 years, but I'm happy. I'm always happy the next generation keeps things going. And we have great conversations. So my fabric stash got replaced, but at the time when the fire happened, I was teaching and speaking to quilt guilds all over California, and they found out what happened. And they sent me hand-dyed fabrics and beautiful things or money to buy fabrics. A friend of mine gave me a room in her house because I moved 7 times till my house was rebuilt. And I got to sew. And that was really healing because I had no control over most of my life at that point, but I could create. So the art is so important. So I now have fabric in my studio. I built a room in the house for a studio. I have it in another room. I have it in the garage. I've got lots now. So, but it took time. Before the fire, I knew exactly what I had, and it took a long time to learn again because strangers were giving me fabrics. And as you can see, I do not store them by colors. So a lot of traditional quilters store by colors. I tried it for 1 week and couldn't deal with it because I need to see patterns and colors next to each other to try things out. And so I do it more like I have Japanese fabric together, Indonesian, the top right, that's Indonesian fabric that was given to me from the 70s. And so I do it that way, fabric from the 50s and 60s, and I keep it together like that. So I wanted to show an example of how I pull fabrics to design and to consider, like you would select paint colors. And then this is my newest piece. It's going to be in a show in Yucca Valley opening this weekend. And Feed the Birds, you can see I used some of the fabrics on the left and some I didn't. And I added, like the purple hand dye is added and the bright pink dots. No, that was there. And there's shibori behind the figure. I still have the Japanese shibori and a little bit of Nigerian fabric in there too, and some vintage flowers. And then I've done machine embroidery and hand embroidery in this piece. But I'm going to take you back in time to my early works now, and it'll take a little memory lane here. So 1995, the top left is the talking tree. So I did the house motif. Even before the fire, I was working with houses, and the houses became leaves. And it's 17 by 20 from 1997. The bottom left is called Stars. And you can see some photo transfers. That's actually me as a really young child on there. And this piece hung in Sacramento. Years ago, a governmental area, they would select one artist and they would have a show in Sacramento. And mine was chosen. This is from 1995. And I thought my politician was quite progressive because I was the only fiber art piece in the show. And I got to go to the reception, and there was a poem with this, and it hung in Sacramento for a long time. It was really very nice. And then the piece next to that, it started to snow. What looks like snowflakes is actually tatting that was given to me. The silk across the top was hand dyed by a friend. I drew the leaf and painted. So there's fabric paints that work like watercolors. So that was really fun to find. And I drew leaves. And a lot of this other fabric is from Japan. It's 26 by 23. And I have the uneven edges. The batting that I use, the cotton, allows that to happen very easily. It works really well. And then the large piece, which is probably about the largest I've done, Seasonal Rain, is 60 by 48 inches. I did it in 4 parts and then sewed it together. With the batting and everything, it gets really heavy. So to machine quilt and move things around, it's hard when it's super large. So I had it in 4 parts. The top right piece where there's stilts on the houses, some of my husband's family in St. Louis actually was in houses on stilts, and that made quite an impression on me. So you just never know what's going to affect you. And so this piece hung in my first solo show of fiber art that was at Chaffey College in Rancho Cucamonga. So the piece on the left and the top are from 2005 and 2006. So wind chimes on the left is 20 by 22, and there's silk and a poem. So when I moved back home, hundreds of houses burned in my neighborhood. And when I moved back home, there were no birds, which was very strange. I live near the foothills. There's a lot of birds. And so a neighbor had put up wind chimes, and that's all I heard in the morning. The birds have now returned, but it's been 20 years. They're here. And then sounds at the top, which is 15 by 25 from 2006. I just wrote about how my new house had new sounds. And so we rebuilt in a year and a half. It felt like forever, but we were one of the first to move back home. And we rebuilt here. People are like, why would you come back? But this house had been here a long time before this happened, and I'm hoping it never happens again. This was a far-reaching fire at the time. And then the piece at the bottom is called A Mountain and a Cloud, and that's Big Bear, which right now is covered in snow and gorgeous. And I wrote a poem, and it's about the mountain and the cloud. It's the thing of being jealous of each other. You know, the cloud is like, you're so solid and stable, and the mountain's like, oh, I wish I could move like you do. And the trees are stamped, and the yarn is wrapped. I did some frame weaving for a little while and learned some different textile techniques from weaving. So I thought I'd share one exhibit with you. I've been an artist for a long time, so I have a lot of shows that I've done. So I just chose this one called Bespoke. And it was a group show, fiber show. Myself, Madeline Arnott, Melanie Cacconi, Nicolette Kamenos, and Misty Joseph at Roswell Space in Los Angeles. And I did a fleeting series. And this is Fleeting Life, 30 by 30. I put this poem by Basho here because it inspired the piece. A lovely spring night suddenly vanished while we viewed cherry blossoms. And so on here, the peony is velvet, and the pink in the middle is a sheer. So I'm playing with different textiles. The sort of flower shape at the bottom left is from an old scarf. I've got, so I need everyone to mute, please. Thank you. So I have beads, and I wanted to show a close-up of the embroidery. This embroidery of the cherry petals took hours, so that's why I do it some, or I would not have the quilts done. I'd have like one. And then the words are taken from poems, so it's just parts of poems with my handwriting. And oh, there's my, okay. So this is Fleeting Thoughts. I got into doing more I call them costume sculptures, and this was in the show. And this is also a costume that I wear for my current performance. That's called Water Remembers. And I wanted you to see that it hung in the restroom of the gallery, but Jonna gives it another name, but I don't remember what it is, but it's part of the gallery space. But you know, there's a lot of famous art that hangs in restrooms and galleries, so why not? So this is the front and the back. The shirt underneath is recycled from my clothing. The roses that come over the top, that was given to me. I don't know who gave it to me, and I don't know where it's from, but it's hand cross-stitched. So I've been wanting to use this piece for years because it's just amazing. And then I added collage. There's also a quilt from the 30s, that green leaf, that's hand quilted. That's from the 1930s. I was given permission to cut that up because it was stained and torn in a lot of places, but I collaged, so it worked out. And the skirt I made from different kimono silks and some of my old skirts. And on the back, that's yukata, so that's Japanese cotton, the iris, and then I added crystals and different ribbons, beads. I also did some work in the show inspired by the Yucatan, which I got to go to with Adiola, who's here. And so in the belly of canoe, there was this one temple near the coast, and they built a rectangle that with like a window that would guide the canoes so they wouldn't hit the coral reefs. So I got to go snorkeling in the coral reefs, see the canoes, but they also believe there's snakes in the sky. So I've got snakes, and there were snakes coming down the temples, and they weren't evil. It was wonderful. So this fabric is actually Australian, but it captured the mood for me. So this poem is in my newest book, which I'll talk about soon. In the belly of a canoe, I traverse the lower world, cocooned in a canoe. Shamanic drum beats and snake rhythm take me far back to look forward. Map unfolds in a parallel universe. In a trance, turquoise waters surround, sea turtles glide unseen among wavering seaweed. Your presence vibrates my inner core, mark-making humanity scribes your shell like cracks in the mud. Inside my belly, unbroken waves of water and sand burn through ashen undertow, sucked under. I am suddenly washed by jealousy, helplessness, and shame. You say, don't struggle against the tide. Ischel swims nearby. I offer her a scallop shell. She gifts a small carved hawksbill. Drum thumps a safe return of my canoe to crystalline sea. I point the prow toward the temple window, row away from sharp coral, slice through gentle waves. Upon the shore, I bury my feet in soft sands, sense the heartbeat of Earth Mother, bear witness as memories become ghosts shrouded in white ocean light. So this is the book that has this poem in it. And this is brand new. I'm actually waiting for my copies. It's just been put up on Amazon and it's in my website, Dancing Through the Fire Door, Guided Journeys in Art and Poetry. And it has sculptures by A.E. Van Fleet and photography by Heather Rinne. And yes, that's my daughter. And so it's my poems, and every image, every poem have keywords. And I also made journeys. So it's worked a long time on this to pull together. You can travel through the book and look at photographs and poems and words for the day. And it's a full book. And so that poem is in there. And I also made performance out of the poems. So I go to Desert Dairy Artist Residency. This was 2022. But that was actually my first time. I'll be returning in 2024 for the third time in April. I love it out there. I made the costume while I was there, 10 days away, just focusing. I developed the performance, I made the costume, and you can see I performed then a year later, Dancing Through the Fire Door at a salon. This dress was also given to me. It's African, gorgeous. I left the yoke is the original fabric, and then I just collage on other parts of it. So this is the piece you saw hanging in the restroom. This is Water Remember. So there's two parts to this performance, the water and the fire. Dear body, you carry me through many years, injury, sickness, and birth pains. Hair goes from dark brown to gray, wrinkles form, skin sags. Your need for rest or a walk. You enjoy a friend's hug. You make it through a pandemic. You believe and hold the sacred. Slavic ancestors from Poland and Ukraine become guides. Whale totem sings of the deep time. Born from stardust, you grasp new ideas in poems, performance, and fiber art. I dress you in fun textures and patterns. A pioneer, you read the destiny of others. So because one book wasn't enough, I decided to have two books come out 2 days in a row. And this is the other one. This is brand new. I just got those in the mail today. So Today on Two Planets is part 2 of a fairy tale that I started many years ago. And the first book is also a collaboration with Todi O'Brien and her art. It's my poems. And this time I invented a planet. This planet's too cold. I invented a creature that had to move there because they were going extinct. So again, working in themes, and there's family and transformations. And I think there's going to be a book 3. So the collaborations I do a lot with performance and with the poetry. Over half my books are collaborations, putting different voices together. So I fell in love with the desert a few years ago. I had Moon of Many Petals, Troy Needles Press is based in Joshua Tree. My book launch was there, and they have published 2 other books since. And so I started going out there a lot to share poetry. And then I thought, well, I'm also an artist. So I started exhibiting my art quite a bit, and I still am. And these are a couple of places. So this is on the left at Joshua Tree National Park Association West is a newer space in Yucca Valley. And they have wonderful art exhibits that are juried. And then Joshua Tree Retreat Center, Elemental Treasures, the Artful Bookstore. My work is there all the time, both my art and poetry. And I'm going to be doing more desert events this spring, working with musicians, writers, and artists. And so in the picture, this is a reception I went to recently. Rose Baldwin and I will be launching books. I'll be launching Dancing Through the Fire Door in May with her at High Desert Magazines. And so this was an event they had there recently. And I'm working on Renewal Fiber Art Show with Louisa Bartlett at the Art Colony of Morongo Valley, which is opening April 6th. I'm also hoping to have a book launch for Today in the Forest in Sierra Madre at the Bag, but that's not confirmed yet, in April. So things are in the works. And these are pieces that are going to be in the show at Morongo with Louisa. And so I wanted you to see, this is what my design wall looks like. So these pieces are ready to be quilted. Some I've started, and you can see the batting around the edge. So I hold on to the batting, and that's how I do the free motion and quilt. And then when the quilts are finished, I cut them off. And so that's a nice feeling to have that finishing to it. There's sheen calais in the piece in the bottom right. There's silks, there's stamping, shears, all in these different pieces, rice paper. So they're going to be future works. I put my email here at the end again because if you would like to keep up with my activities of poetry and writing, I do a monthly newsletter. And if you write me, I will add you to the list. I do try to keep Facebook and Instagram updated, but this is the best way to follow me. And I just want to thank you for having me.
That was just astonishing, Cindy.
Oh,
Thank you.
Thank you.
What a wonderful, exquisite, and I'm sure huge hour amount of preparation. Oh my goodness.
I don't know where it went. I'm just going to stop. It
Oh, alrighty. Okay.
I'll bring it back if I need to.
Okay.
I like
So,
seeing everybody anyway.
all right. So raise your hand if you want to ask a question. That would be super if anyone does.
Yeah, hi. No, it was just wonderful. And I wanted to know just a little bit, get a better sense of sort of your travels. You grew up in Kansas City.
Okay, yeah, I grew up in Kansas City. I went to school at the University of Missouri, Columbia, and then decided I didn't like the snow. And my husband and I moved to Santa Barbara. And so I went to school. We both went to school in Santa Barbara, Taiwan, came back to Kansas City for a short time, and then he got a teaching job in Denver. So in Denver is where I finally took watercolor classes because I'm looking out my window at the Rockies going, I want to know how to paint mountains and clouds. And so that's, where I started taking classes because it was just, so he would fish and I would paint with watercolors at the streams. And then, so Cal State San Bernardino at that time was a college, and they came to Denver and hired him for a tenure track position, which there were like 2 in the country at that time. So, we grabbed it, came back to California, and he taught there 32 years. So we have stayed here and raised our children in San Bernardino. But I still like to travel. I forgot to say that with the Japanese journey I took you on in October, I'm going to Japan finally. So I'm really excited about that.
First time? That'll be your first time?
First time. When we were in Taiwan, we couldn't afford Japan. We just, even though he had a job, but we had just finished being students, and we went to Hong Kong, which was British at the time. So that's how long ago we were there. Because we could do that, and there was English in Hong Kong, but Japan was just out of our price range at the time. So I'm gonna go full circle.
That's great. And I just wanted to ask you too, the connection with Kansas City and Kansas and the Midwest is there quilting in your background, in your blood from, ancestors quilting at all?
Not that I know of, and I don't have any art in my ancestry either that I know of. I'm the first. I have a little funny story about that. My great uncle in Cicero, part of my family lived in Cicero and Illinois, and we would go there, and in the basement he was painting on an easel, and I thought, wow, I have an artist in the family. Well, years later I find out he was doing paint by number.
Oh.
But I'm a little kid, I'm 8 years old, I don't know, but I'm the first. But my daughter, as you can see her photographs from my book, and then my niece is doing animation at Fullerton right now, so it's going forward.
Great. That's wonderful. Thank you. It was
Thank
beautiful.
you.
Very enjoyable.
I'm so moved by your creative journey and how it just traversed through seamlessly through different forms. And I so respect that. That really speaks to me a lot.
Thank you. I don't know if it's because I'm an Aquarian, but I just get bored easily, and I like new challenges, and I like putting things, I'm a visionary, so I put things together, like I said, a lot of collaboration, and I don't know if that's what it is, but it's part of it. It is part of it. And I do like the blending of media. Yeah. But each one, with the performing, I went and took workshops. I'm not a drama major, and the different steps, I would just go and learn what I could and work with people who knew. The poetry, I'm sorry, I didn't mention that when I decided later in my, later on in life that I wanted to do writing, I linked up with Cal State San Bernardino English majors and graduates because I didn't have that background. And we got together once a week, and we critiqued, and I learned, and I went to readings, and I did open mics, and I've published 15 books in like 15 years, and with publishers, nothing self-published. One of my publishers is here, Katya. Yay!
Well, I just want to say what is inspiring to me about what you've done. I have also been artsy all my life, but I was discouraged from doing it. And part of my journey is being less rigid with myself and more willing to just go with it. And you are incredibly inspiring because you go with it and look at all the wonderful places it's led you.
Yes, and communities. I now have a poetry community. I'm getting a zine community, and the art community, and so it's wonderful. Each media brings a new group of people.
Mm-hmm. Well, to me, that's the essence of one of the most wonderful parts of art. And I think visual artists have a different, it's not naturally like a chorus typically has more than one singer. And so to actually create community, and yet I think art that is not embedded in community, I won't say what it is or isn't, but to me, it's so much richer when
Yes.
and long lasting. And you also become the channel, is my belief. It's what something's coming from you, your own experience, but something else is coming through you. And that's what's so fun when it's shared with others, because I'm sure, Cindy, you have the experience of someone, you read a poem or show the work and people speak to it and you go, oh. because it resonates with a different part of them than it does with you as its creator.
It's the magic for me when that happens. That's
Yeah.
the magic. Yes.
I
Well,
wanted to find out more about the zines. I missed that event up at the Eagle Rock.
Well, I'm doing another one in Pomona, in Claremont at Pomona College, March 2nd and 3rd. Print Pomona, it's called, but it's actually in Claremont. I can send you the information, Alika. It's art books and zines, so it's a really 2 day.
Really interested. What now? How did you find zines and how did you connect with that?
Well, like I said, they really come out of the 60s and 70s. So when I sort of rediscovered them not that long ago, I was very comfortable. I'm like, I know zines. And I went to some workshops, and usually I was, twice as old as everyone there, but I didn't care. I wanted to learn how to do it. And I like doing zines because I can bring in my paintings again, my drawings, my poems, collage, photography, all these different things. And I worked as a graphic designer, so I feel like I can use it to design the page. And what Sandra said, I decided to get into Zine Fest and do this because I liked the community. I attended some and thought, I want to be with these people. They're wonderful. And they're not competitive. They're very sharing. Zines, you trade and you give and you buy them and you support each other, but it's wonderful community. And I just decided a year ago that I really wanted to be with them. So I went to the Zine Fest last year, which many were the first time since COVID. I mean, this is all just getting going again, really. And I made them. And so then a year later, I had 10 zines, and I have them at the Minnesota Center for the Book Arts has my zines. I have them in San Francisco. I have them in Joshua Tree, 29 Palms, and Redlands. And so I kind of got them out into galleries first because that's what's comfortable for me, right? The galleries. And then thought, okay, I'm going to try Zine Fest. And I've done 2 recently, and I've had such a good time actually talking to people of all ages.
So
Because,
are they the same as artist books? I'm a little, I
no,
think they are.
no.
maybe
Yeah.
share what a zine is, because I
What is
think
the zine? What is your zine?
Well, I have the one let's see, I've got a bunch of, okay, here's a good way to show. You can take a piece of paper, ta-da, and fold it up a certain way, and you have a zine. And then I have several this size. I also have, they're more like booklets, I would say, than artist books, and they can be one of a kind, but it tends to be more than one of a kind. So this is just, I print this at home. It's got one of my paintings inside that I cut up, and it has a poem that I hand wrote. So I worked on this during my last residency. So this is my handwriting. Sometimes it's typed, but I then reproduce these
Oh, how do you reproduce them? And
on my printer at home.
on your printer. And what's an edition, for instance?
I don't do editions. I don't have editions. It's just however
Is
many.
it stapled together? How do you make it?
Stapled. I have a long arm stapler. I bought a long arm stapler. Now the one I showed you with the Sheen Collet, that I had professionally printed because I wanted my photographs to be really beautiful, which my printer wasn't going to do this quality. So I do both, but I don't have editions. You
Catherine,
can. You
Why
can.
is that different than a book?
Well, it is kind of, but it's just one poem and it's collaged together. It's not a lot different.
I think it comes out to a marketplace, a group that
Yes.
wants to see something more informal, but you could easily curate that same piece into an exhibition of more formal pieces. Kathy.
Happy.
Yeah, I just want to say something about what a zine is. The word is short for magazine. And I'm just thinking back to my days in 60s
Yeah.
when people would do these grassroots publications and pass them out,
That's
you know.
right.
And
Xerox.
the idea is it's not an addition, you know, or something formal. It's just, this is what I'm thinking. I'm putting it together in a form that I can get out there and get people to see. And there are all different kinds of zines, but the main thing about them is that they're very grassroots.
Thank you. Yes, Xerox. It started with Xerox
Mhm.
because that was inexpensive and you could do it yourself. And so the printers now, the color is nicer, but it was, yeah, back in the 60s and 70s, it was Xerox. And it's still to get things out, and there's still our political ones.
Right.
You know, there's a range.
This one of our Lifetime Achievement awardees, Barbara T. Smith, who lives in Pasadena, you know, she did a lot of experimenting around one of the early people on the Xerox machine and had a really very interesting show up at the Getty this year, where they really went in. I mean, just as if they were, you know, taking this wonderful, you know, illustrated, you know, from 1450 or whether it be something before. In a sense, it is before or without the printing press. It is interesting that there is sort of that similitude, that you're not, it reaches the multitudes, but you're not and you have a way of doing multiples, but you're not sitting there in a counted way. It's sort of, it's sitting in a different strata. It's like going to Burning Man, where your whole
Yes.
cash is you have to trade.
Yeah, it's a whole movement. They're called zinesters, and there's zine fests all over the country, and it is a thing, and it's usually younger people, but I love it.
And do you sell or trade, or
Yes.
how do you exchange? What is your mode?
Well, I traded with some of the other vendors, but they did offer to buy things, but I wanted something of theirs anyway. So, you know, there's some trading, but I mean, I had to pay to be there, so I need to sell
Sure.
some things, right? It's not, sometimes I'm actually going to get paid to be in a zine fest, which is amazing. And once in a while I get paid to read poetry. So, you know, these things do happen sometimes.
Sure. Well, one thing that can be fun if you show up where there's youngsters, like I play a lot of pickleball, and I got asked to be in this little sort of fun video, right? And I couldn't figure out why I was there, you know, because they had all these younger, really sexy girl, whatever. And I realized that part of their audience is older people. So it was like, in a way, it was very, I mean, I was flattered, but it was very useful to the director.
Yeah, well, all ages attend the Zine Fest, which is interesting, even though it tends to be a younger crowd. There's all ages.
Good. Yay.
So it's like I said, it's just a nice way to connect with the next generation. And, you know, I was doing some mentoring while I was there because it's not my first time to do a show. And so I also like to be able to share some experiences with them. And then they show me new ideas. You know, it goes back and forth.
I
Cool.
think it's fun, and I'd love you to do a workshop for us. That would really be fun. So did you say that it's like an illustrated poetry? Sorry. Stop it. It's like an illustrated poem collage.
That's what I do. Now, other people don't write poetry. You don't have to be a poet to do zines. But I already am a writer, so it's a nice way to use it. And I'll write them for the zines, you know, and use the poems there. But that's not a requirement at all. You can do words, no words. Some people's look more like comics. I mean, it's a range. It's just a range.
I was confused as to, I mean, the difference between an artist book, a zine, and even a graphic novel, which I think is much more complex or something more bigger, right?
Yeah, graphic novel looks more like comics. So I'm actually taking a class right now called graphic literature, which suits me because I'm really not a comic book artist, but I like to do graphics and literature and art together. So it's sort of a newer movement, I think.
Wow.
Yeah, just playing
That's
with new things
exciting,
all the
yeah.
time. Just keep exploring.
Is there anyone who hasn't spoken that would like to add a
Licha,
comment
Licha, my friend would
or
like
do a
to.
question?
Yeah, no sign.
There she
Okay, okay,
is.
I got it. I have trouble
Hi.
with, I went through 2 computers and I still couldn't get Zoom, so I'm in my phone and it just
Aw.
is kind of
Ah,
different.
it's hard.
Yeah, so I apologize for that. You know, it's wonderful what I was able to see. I know your work is just fantastic. I mean, you know,
Thank you.
your poetic skills and all your color schemes and you know, the way that you put it together, you know, this is a spiritual self that comes through that I always really enjoyed. I mean, it's really wonderful. So good to learn a few more things about the things that you're doing. I'm always, as you know, follow you. And that book, I mean, I haven't seen the one that you collaborated with Todi, but the one about, how do you call? The Dancing Through the Fire Door. It's
Yeah.
a wonderful, beautiful book. It's just beautiful. That's the one I wrote the blurb for. Yeah.
Yeah, so she's
gorgeous.
seen it.
Yeah. Yeah. I really, and I like the questions that his members are asking. I think it's great. I did have a poem that I wrote for Susan Spector. That she
right.
sold. She sold it with the poem included with my poem.
Yay.
Yeah.
Did. I
Yeah.
did.
Yes.
Yes, it was wonderful. She even wanted to pay me. I said, no, I donate the money to the organization. Just do it.
Hmm.
It was great. It was very nice. Yeah. But this is a great opportunity to see some of your work again. So thank you. Yeah.
Yeah, I do have to say, when SCWCA invited the poets to come and read, I felt so honored and special. You did such a great job reserving seats for us and giving us notebooks and just gifts. It was
was
really
wonderful.
nice.
Yeah.
See,
Yeah.
it was wonderful.
Yeah. It was very sweet.
I tell people about it. I brag on it.
I even use the little notebook. I carry it with me in my car for when I'm
Excellent.
inspired. Yeah, it's great. Yeah. All right.
Karen, did you want to speak? You're
Oh,
moving.
Katya
or-
has a question.
Okay, yes.
Oh, I just had a little comment. I've known Cindy for a while.
Uh-oh.
And every time I hear you, Cindy, talk about your work, I'm like, she did what again? So fascinating. It's a pleasure always to hear about you explaining about the work. And I have a few pieces at home, and I know I gifted my mom a couple, and she absolutely adores them. She wakes up every day and she's like, I found something else in the one in the art. So
In Lebanon. These pieces are
yes,
in
in
Lebanon.
Lebanon, all the way there. So
Excellent.
quite grateful
This
for
is
all the
my
work you
key.
put in.
Yes. So
Yeah, very
Katya and
grateful.
I are going
This
to
is Cindy's
collaborate.
piece.
Yes. Yay.
Oh, look at that. Beautiful.
Katya and I are going to collaborate with music. Katya actually does art, poetry, music, and she published my book, Letters Under Rock. So she also
Yeah.
does many
Oh,
things. But we're going to collaborate with poetry and music in
wonderful.
Yeah, I think
Valley.
it's in May, yeah.
In
So
May.
it should be fun.
I think you've done, whereas, where will my art take me? Where will my desire to create take me? Who will I get to meet? It's sort of the Dr. Seuss thing, right? Where will I go? Where will I meet? And that's the life. I mean, I think where I'm as inspired both by what's been created as that spirit of the life, you know, the journey, the you know,
Mhm.
where you've gone, the people you've met, the ones you've decided to collaborate with. It's a really just enlivening experience. We started a little late, but I think this has been so wonderful to have time together, and it's a very rich experience. Thank you, Cindy.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank
Oh,
you.
thank you. This was wonderful.
You're
Yes.
very encouraging. Thank you so much. And thank you for my friends who persisted to get through. I want you to
I
know.
know, I did.
I know, I couldn't get through at the beginning either. You weren't the only ones, but I'm so
Yeah.
glad you were able to
And-
come.
All
And
right.
next month is Aleka. Is Nancy, do you want to say a couple words about that?
Yeah, I'm very excited to have Aleka join and talk about her art and her art journey. And her work currently is primarily having to do with masks. And she's showing them all over Southern California. And some of them even move of their own volition. And,
Which
so I think that's going to be exciting. And I told this to Aleka just the other day that when I first met Aleka, she said, "Oh, and I studied with Joseph Campbell." I thought, what?
what?
Really?
And then she starts making these masks. So I said, Aleka, we have to talk about the masks and Joseph Campbell and how it all sort of works together and stuff.
Right.
That's next March.
Well, and we just
Okay.
have a wonderful series because then Kathy Salzer is going to be our April artist. And
Yeah.
she both does her own art, but she founded the wonderful Window Between Worlds. And those of you who were with us at the retreat day know just what a gifted facilitator she is with people. And then in May, we have our very own Karen Schiffman. So it will be quite a special time. And so
Aleka muted.
you're muted.
I wanted to plug our show down at the Makery. If you guys haven't been there yet, upstairs
okay.
is our beautiful love. What is it called? Love and
Lust
Love.
for Life or Lust
Love
for-
and lust.
Love and
Love and
love.
Love.
Love and lust and
Downstairs is
playtime.
playtime. And I have
Playtime
3 pieces
downstairs.
in playtime.
So much
It's a-
fun.
It's a very fun show, and fun as in having fun. And upstairs is gorgeous. So I don't know how long it's up, another couple of weeks or something, but go see it. It's really fun. Anyway, so that's it.
That's it.
All right.
And also when you get your e-news, the Circling Project is very cool. It's national. So it taps into all the things we're doing. Find some way to create something on a circle. For sure, it will be in at least one piece. It's going out in e-news to members. And if you want to know and you aren't a member, just Cindy can send you our way. That would be great.
And I want to add
Wonderful.
that
Thank
there's
you.
a performance at the Makery this Sunday.
All
As
right.
part of the playtime, it's set in the afternoon.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah.
Excellent.
Thank
Okay.
you, everyone, for listening to my story.
You're
Thank you,
welcome.
everyone.
I
Thank
think
you,
there are
Cindy.
chapters to come.
Chapters to come.
Chapters to come. Be well. All
Thank
right.
you.
Bye.
Thank you, everyone.